Welcome to Snippets of Wisdom with your host, Dr. Mike Corral and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Snippets of Wisdom is the boomer's gift to the next generation and to the world at large. Dr. Michael J. Murphy and Coach Dr. Mike Corral are experienced psychotherapists, writers, and healers who find the greatest satisfaction in sharing the benefits of a lifetime of struggle and learning. Coach Mike has spent decades spreading deep wisdom and supporting youth through the juvenile justice system. Dr. Michael has directed mental health services at many correctional centers and testified in countless trials as an expert in sex-related issues and mental illness. And he was one of the 500,000 humans at Woodstock. So now, please welcome the hosts of Snippets of Wisdom.
And welcome to Snippets of Wisdom. I'm Dr. Michael Corral, joined by my co-host here, Dr. Michael Murphy. Today, we're unpacking a profound question. In moments of uncertainty, why do so many of us actually, default to defensiveness rather than compassion? Dr. Michael Murphy, it's a question that's deeply relevant in our daily lives. What do you think about that?
One of the things that fascinates me is, so many of us are involved in social media now and podcasts and looking on the web all the time. And it seems like so many of the images that we're presented with on media are negative in nature, right? So we sort of open up our phone or whatever, we look at the news. I don't know if anyone reads newspapers anymore, but if you do, then you sort of look at these alarmist headlines about the latest tragedy in the world or how things are going to hell in a handbasket, if you'll allow me to say that. And it's sort of like the focus on negativity is something that tends to nudge things in a negative direction, I think. So, we really do need to confront that and then take some kind of action that will help us to nudge things so they go in a more positive direction. And that is what today's show is really about, is first noticing what's going on and seeing what's happening in the world today, and then also then starting to develop the skills and the awareness that will help us to start to move things in a more positive direction. That's way better for us and for our communities and for our families.
It's important to realize that we do it out of probably self-preservation. Our instinct is like to protect ourselves. And so anything that seems ambiguous or uncertain or, it's not clearly safe, we automatically assume that it's dangerous because there's so much uncertainty. I think that it's important to even just ask the question, what if we defaulted to compassion instead, or faith and confidence instead? What if we set each other up to feel safe by the way we listen, by the way we talk to each other, by the things that we presume? We can presume that we're headed towards a good space and that we're creating great outcomes just as easily as we assume that it's going in a different direction. What are your thoughts?
That's such a great insight, and it really is fundamental because we, as human beings, and I work with clients a lot about this, we as human beings are conditioned to deal with uncertainty with a response of fear and anxiety, right? So when we look at a situation, any kind of situation, we get up in the morning, we go outside, we go to work, we don't really know what the day is going to be like or what other people are going to be like. And so when we're presented with uncertainty, we naturally respond with anxiety, which heightens our nervous system and gets us into an elevated state of readiness that we think on a real primitive animal level will increase our probabilities of survival. So the survival instinct is oriented around dealing with uncertainty, with anxiety and fear. And yet that's a negative pattern that actually contributes to a more negative outcome. It's so we get caught up in these negative cycles because of this kind of biologically based negative predisposition
Yeah.
with regard to how we interpret uh, ambiguity. So the word so just focusing on the word ambiguity for a moment, it just
Mhm.
means that any stimulus that we encounter that is unclear. We can't tell if it's this or it's that. It's sort of, and that's the way life is. I mean, every day we confront uh, just a countless series of ambiguous situations. We, we look at somebody, we encounter somebody, and we start to communicate with them. We're not sure how this is going to turn out. So, how we respond to that situation, what we choose to anticipate, really will influence how things are going to go in that situation
Yeah.
to a very significant extent. So I think psychologically, one of the skills that we can learn and that we'll be talking about today is how we can start to influence those situations decisively by making a choice, each and every one of us, to choose to interpret the potential outcome in a more positive way. And once
Absolutely.
we do that, that kind of nudges it in that direction. So we're going to talk about the skills that we can develop in order to do that because it's just critical. One of
It,
the things we'll be talking about, I think, is that now, this is a particular moment in time on the planet Earth when we are presented with all these opportunities. AI, changes in global culture. We're really trying to come up with the new uh, kind of planetary economic and social system that will help us to function in a more cooperative and loving and caring way
yeah.
as a community, as a human community on the planet. And I think that's, it really is a critical time when we have an opportunity that we really need to work hard not to screw up, because it's just so important. I mean, with AI and the emergence of unlimited resources in terms of energy, we're
Yeah.
really going to have some opportunities here on the planet Earth to do some good things if
Yeah.
we can choose to really approach the situation in a positive and cooperative way.
The Journal of Social Psychology several years ago reported that now in the digital age, digital communication especially, amplifies the defensive responses. And so what you just said is absolutely true. We do need to make the intended effort towards approaching it, uh, you know, with confidence and with hope instead of giving into the tendency to be led by fear, anxiety, and all of these reactive emotions that are not positive. So I think that as ambiguity and an emotional response, our brains are wired to seek certainty. And if we could actually train our brain to know what it wants instead of what we're afraid might happen, um, when we can't find it, ambiguity just kind of sets in. What we really need to do is think more clearly about what would be the alternative, the positive alternative, with detail and with definition so that we know what to anticipate, so that we can control what we anticipate instead of letting the media do that for us. What are your thoughts?
That's a great it's a great uh, comment, I think, and that's the fundamental question, that we as human beings, when we encounter uncertainty, we naturally respond with fear and anxiety because we feel like if we anticipate the most negative possible outcome, then in some way we're increasing our chances of survival. When in fact, that pattern is really not the healthiest pattern for us to engage in. So we're
Absolutely
trying
agree.
to alter that kind of predisposed pattern that is kind of hardwired into us over hundreds of thousands, or at least thousands of years,
Yeah.
and to learn how to start to anticipate the positive outcome and um, seeing things in a way that we start to visualize what it would be like if this particular situation that we're confronting turned out in a positive direction. So one of the things we wanted to talk about, I know you mentioned earlier, is uh, when we are confronted with some kind of information it, that we are concerned about, and it seems like it, you know, may turn out well, it may not turn out well, we can engage in what we call reflective listening. When you just repeat to the person what you heard them saying, or you describe the situation for the other person in a clear and coherent way. Well, it sounds like you're saying, or it sounds like the situation is this.
Yeah.
Then when the other person says, yes, that's exactly what I think is going on, then you have a common bond. Then you've established a bridge, a bridge of communication, which means that you have a common understanding about what's going on and you can begin to work out some solutions that you believe will really lead to the outcome that's going to be
Right.
advantageous for both of you.
That's a benefit that is, I don't know, it just kind of seems like we're tending to lose the opportunity for dialogue in real time. The way social media projects a lot, it's kind of a one-way dialogue, and you're hearing things, and there's no opportunity for controversy to say, well, I don't know if I agree with that, because it's all one way. We're all doing the listening from social media, and the reactions are posted, but they're not posted in real time. We get to post them after we process them in anger or frustration or disgust or whatever our emotion is, and then we project them. Whereas in a real time, real live dialogue, we get to do that reflective listening that you just talked about and ask, do you mean this or do you mean that? Or it sounds like you're referring to this or that, and you get to respond right then and then in real time and not have to wait, and defend yourself later, or if you will. I think it's something that we need to cultivate, and we can cultivate that, with intention, the opportunity to dialogue in real time and truly listen to each other and be able to reflect what we're hearing, and not just presume that we get it, not just presume that we understand what was being said, but inquire to the point where we're mutually agreeing upon, what's being discussed.
Yeah, that's a deep and just a very central pattern, that we have the opportunity to choose to be active rather than being reactive. So when
Yes.
we're reactive in terms of just responding to, on a visceral level, whatever we think the other person might be saying or how it could possibly be negatively interpreted, that's being reactive. But if we make a choice to be active, we make a choice to sort of quote unquote to take charge of the situation
Right.
by reflecting to the person what we heard them say. Is this what you're saying? Is this what you think is going on? Then we are opening up the possibilities for a positive outcome in terms of a much more benevolent
Yeah.
interpretation of what's going on. And then once that happens, it's sort of like we're going downhill on the sled, and things are going to turn out well. Things get easier, and moving forward, it
Yeah.
just happens quite spontaneously. So really choosing to be active rather than reactive, and making a decision that we're going to choose to offer an interpretation of what's going on, and then listen to the other's response. It's
Yes.
interesting. We can just close with this and take a break, and we'll come back. But
Perfect.
Aristotle or Socrates said it's the sign of an educated mind to be able to consider a point of view without necessarily accepting it. And it's
Beautiful.
just a deep and beautiful insight that we can say, yes, we're listening. We can consider a point of view. Doesn't mean we have to accept it, but we can consider it. So, we're all trying to be educated minds these days. And I think it's a good thing.
When we come back, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to explore how compassion can become our new reflex. Don't go away. Stay with us.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back. So now we're going to switch gears, because if defensiveness is our default, how do we train ourselves to respond with compassion instead? This is an important question, because it begins with awareness, and we need to pause in ambiguous moments. Just for a second, pause instead of reacting. And so at that pause, we want to ask ourselves, what might this person be feeling? What might this person be thinking? What is their intention? Empathy is powerful. We need to realize that we need to be empathetic and consider that this person has good intentions. And this is where our dialogue comes in, because it's the bridge between uncertainty and understanding. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Murphy?
One of the things that you're saying, once again, it's that process of being active versus being reactive. So we're not basing your pattern and choice about who you are and what you are based on the other person's stimulus, but really making a conscious choice yourself to present the information that you feel is really important and will be helpful in that situation. So I think it's just really making that choice, that intentional choice. It's being intentional in terms of our actions in everything that we do. And once we do that, once we make that choice, then we have the freedom and the power to start to make progress in establishing a shared agenda with regard to the other person. Once they understand that we understand them, then we have a bond and we can start to move forward with elaborating a common purpose. And now we have, a tremendous opportunity, as we were saying earlier, to actualize that shared purpose. That can really be exciting moving forward. I like to see it as sort of opening the door. I'm a reflective listening and giving the other person the realization that you're hearing them is opening the door to
Yeah.
possibilities. And really, we need to open the door before either of us can walk through. So a lot of us, we just do what we're thinking we're at the moment. We just react somehow and we do something, but that's not opening the door. So intentionally opening the door, you have to, if you're going to open the door, you have to reach out and grab the doorknob and turn the doorknob and open it. You have to do something in order to create
Yeah.
that opening. Once there is an opening, both of you or whoever, different nations, different groups, different individuals can make the choice to walk through together
Yeah.
or in sequence. And so it really is, just making sure that we make that choice, that conscious choice first to choose to define the situation and describe the situation in a shared way that we both understand.
As you're saying that, it occurs to me, we're talking about listening, and yet there is so much more to our communication that requires a sensory of acuity, a level of sensory acuity. In other words, we don't just talk with our words, our body language, our tone, our pitch, our expressions when we're listening also communicate. So if we all had the sensory acuity to be active listeners, reflective listeners, shouldn't we also have the acuity to express ourselves, not just with our words, but with our body language as well, and and our behaviors, ultimately with our behaviors indicating that we did understand. Because that's, you've heard the saying, um, communication, what does the saying go, how's it goes, the proof of good communication is the results you get from the listener. So now if you communicated accurately, the person is going to reflect that with the choices that they made, the responses that they made, and ultimately behaviors and decisions they make after that.
Right. So it kind of goes back all the way to when we were little children. So being understood feels like we're being held. Like when we were little infants and we were sort of being held warmly and nurtured by our a loving other. That's that sense of safety. So we're going back to the sense of safety again, where we feel like, hey, this world is okay. I'm okay. I'm safe. I don't have to be worried about any danger that I might face at this point of view at,
Yeah,
at this time. So once you have that feeling of being held in terms of the communication, then your nervous system becomes calm again, and once again you can openly communicate with the other. And I think that's the bridge. Then both of you can walk across that bridge together and
yeah,
share a vision of the future that is, much more positive.
right. The exponential effects of good communication is really, really important to realize and consider. Whether it's good communication or bad communication, we are when people listen to us and respond to us, they take our message and then they project it somewhere else to someone or other entities that are going to do the same thing. So the exponential potential for good communication um, is there, and we as participants need to be proactive. We need to be active participants in the way we express ourselves as much as the way that we listen to each other and perceive each other. We want to be able to provide that nurturing effect that you just described. We want to allow people to feel understood and take a breath of relief, knowing that, yes, I'm understood and my message is going to be forwarded to where it needs to go. Kind of like handing a baton of wisdom to other people by the way we express ourselves. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
so one of the things that I think we can do in order to increase the probability that compassion will be the default response is to establish a practice for each
Yeah,
of us. So each of us, each day, I mean, thinking about what can I do to prepare myself to be able to increase the probability that this day is going to go well. So one of the things that I do every day, and I think many, many people do now, is to do a set of activities, meditation, yoga, breath work in the morning that help you to organize your energy in such a way that you're increasing the probability that you'll be able to really deliver all of the resources that you have the capacity to give. So we all want to give all that we have to give in this life. I mean, that's the goal, right? So So we're going to be here for a certain amount of time. We want to be able to really share the potential that we have to share with our loved ones, with our communities, with our families, with our country, and with the world. And more, we're understanding that that this world is a vibratory phenomenon, that we are part of that whole manifestation,
Yeah.
and we really want to really increase the probability that we can realize that we have given all that we have to give in the best way that we can. And in order to do that, we need to establish a detailed practice that we start out with in the day. And then that carries us forward into all the things that we do.
The idea of these protocols comes up quite a bit, a daily practice, a daily ritual, and these protocols, because they are so fundamental to everything that we do. And we don't realize that we're actually preparing ourselves for greatness by doing these and by incorporating them into our daily life. These habits, they rewire our responses, and you know they help us to become to evolve with each other, with the acquisition of new knowledge and uh, the presentation of new wisdom. It allows us to incorporate those things and then move forward and share them, with other people. So imagine responding to ambiguity with curiosity and kindness instead of just projecting. If we add those elements, the kindness, and the curiosity, intrigue, we want to know more. It draws from the other person, or from the other parties, in a way that makes them want to provide more. It's kind of like a nursing baby. When the baby is nursing, it actually helps the mother to produce more milk. And we're, essentially, philosophically speaking, that metaphorically speaking, it's the way life is. The more intrigued we are, the more curious we are, the more compassionate and kind we are, um, actually provides opportunity and the desire for other people to do likewise, and to be like-minded. What are your thoughts?
Right. So we're wanting to sort of get that ball rolling in the right direction, right? And that's the key, is to get things rolling in the positive and healthful and even loving direction with other people in terms of our interactions. And once that happens, we see so much in media and in politics, people approaching interactions in a negative or even hostile way. They're
Mm.
trying to present themselves as aggressive, in order to feel like they're safe. I mean, using that as your default response really contributes to the initiation of a negative cycle.
That's
It's
right.
destructive, increased probabilities of conflict. I mean, when you see somebody who's really being aggressive and sort of hostile and acting in that way, they're probably doing that because they're afraid. They're fearful with regard to their own safety, and they think that in fact they may be at risk, so they're going to act aggressive. I mean, the gorilla sort of pounds his chest, in order to sort of show how strong he is, in order to feel like he's uh, the other party won't dare then to threaten him. But in fact, he's only doing that in order to increase his safety because he is afraid. So teaching ourselves to be more calm and learning how to be more calm, that's what the practice does. The morning practice allows us to be able to be more calm, so we don't engage in the kind of preeminent negative reaction, which increases the probability of a negative outcome.
Wow. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of stories and reflections from different people in our past, in our life. Don't go away. We've got some more talking about uh, compassion versus defensiveness. Don't go away.
Master of words, powerful player, What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. So now in this segment, we're going to talk about instances in our lives where we have actually felt defensive or annoyed or I don't know, a negative response to what we're listening to. I know for me, if I'm listening to music, and it has commercials on it, and it's the same commercial over and over, it becomes annoying after a while to the point where I feel in my gut that I want to criticize the person for the way they're delivering their commercial. But what if we did something different instead? What if I tried to figure out what the person is really trying to say and and kind of got it inside their head a little bit. We become defensive and we become offended quite easily when we're not listening responsibly, or if we're not uh, I don't know, actively listening to the person. Sometimes we're so geared to what we want to say that we even stop listening. It's important for us to understand that as communicators, whether you're talking with friends, relatives, or whether you're teaching a class, or whether you're participating in an audience, whatever it is, we need to learn how to listen in a way that is going to bring out the best in us. We're in charge of that part. It's not just the speaker who's in charge of making us feel good. We're in charge about how we respond to the things that we're listening to. Um, Dr. Murphy, I know that you have ways of uh, conjuring up, if you will, or directing ourselves towards more compassion. Tell us a little bit about how we can make that happen, and what does it take to be able to make that happen?
So even before that, it sounds like one of the ways that we can make that happen, as you're saying, is by reflecting to the person what you just heard them say. And I just heard you say that sometimes when you're listening to commercials or instructions or things like that, it's kind of irritating. You don't like what they're saying, and it kind of raises your negative emotion a little bit, and so you feel kind of irritated, and so you start going down that negative road, right? And that's sort of see. So what I'm doing with you right now is just reflecting to you what I just heard you say, and that gives you a sense that
Yeah,
I'm hearing what you're
listen.
saying, and that kind of means that we're working together. You realize when you're dancing with somebody, you really want to feel that the other person's dancing with you, and
Yes,
you're dancing with them, and you're dancing together. And so that magic, the magic of union, of mutual responsiveness, is the essence of compassion, co-passion. It's shared passion.
Yes.
Literally, it's a part of a human loving relationship when we actually uh, share passion and share intention and share awareness by letting the other person know that we're aware of them. It's the dance, the emotional dance. I'm dancing in conjunction with you. I'm not just ignoring you. I'm not trying to overwhelm you. I'm not trying to control you. I'm seeing you and feeling you and responding to you. So, I think that's the key, and that's what really is the magic that I think even now internationally, I think in terms of our world, we face these political moments of conflict in the news today that we hear all about. If we are able to switch to an orientation of attentiveness and sharing and support, that really can change the whole dynamic
Right.
of even international political relationships.
Hmm.
That we can say, hey, I want to share what we have. We have something, I want to share it with you. I have, two pieces of bread. I want to share the other piece of bread with you. So it's wanting to be willing to give to the other person of what you have. And so I think once you've established that, then you're on the right path. And the possibilities are endless. Right now, in the course of human progress, we happen to be confronted with a moment when, the opportunities are literally and figuratively endless for us. So I'm just really excited about it. And I think the more that we can just seek to be cooperative with each other, the more that we're going to really see the results.
I get it. That totally makes sense. It reminds me that we're dealing with something, when we're dealing with compassion, we're dealing with more than just an ideal. We're actually looking at an opportunity and a tool that can be used, um, for navigating our uncertainties and our our questions, our inquiries. And these are tools and opportunities for us to really transform our relationships, not just our intimate relationships with our own family and friends, but our relationships at a global level, exponentially thinking. Um, I I know that compassion is just one of the tools that we can use towards that. And you know, we hinted about curiosity and intrigue before, but to actually have the I don't know, the desire to understand what the other is saying is another important tool for us. Uh, Tell us a little bit about that understanding and how it can reflect, in positive ways with more direct manifestations, knowing that
Right.
we.
And one of the things that I think we can do, and I think many of us do now, is to um, start our day with meditation, like we all talk about, the positive visualization and the effect, the law of actualization. Well, what is the law of actualization? Well, the law of actualization says that if we visualize a positive outcome to our situation, I remember years ago when I was taking my doctoral comprehensive examinations, everyone was very nervous about that. I mean, are we going to pass? Are we going to fail? They can ask you anything, literally anything. And if you don't have the right answer, you're going to fail. So we're very nervous. But one of the things that we learned to do, because we sort of trained in what we call hypnosis, which is really just a form of positive visualization, we learned to sort of anticipate that we're going to do very well in that exam. The answers are going to naturally come to us. We're going to succeed. We imagine how we'll feel after we pass and do great on the exam. And sure enough, that's how it turned out for virtually all of us. So really just being able to visualize, the positive outcome and then meditate on that. Breathe, inhale and exhale slowly while you visualize that positive outcome, and you actually feel the feeling that you will have after you have succeeded in the way that you want to succeed.
Yeah.
Once you do that and you feel that in your gut and you visualize it very clearly and you do that repeatedly, then when you enter into the actual situation, you find that it really increases the probability that you're going to have a positive outcome.
Yeah.
So that whole capacity to anticipate the positive outcome, visualize it, feel it, meditate on it, just takes a few minutes. But if you
Yeah.
do it repeatedly, it's going to significantly increase your demeanor, your level of relaxation, your potential to actualize all the resources that you have to give. So, so I believe that each one of us has a unique um, gifts, has unique capacities to give to the world. Each one of us human beings, each one of us vibratory um, entities in this world, we have something to offer, and the world needs exactly that which we have to offer, and we need to believe that and really allow ourselves to give that and be confident in the awareness that if we give that, the world will be a better place. And so once we understand that and we start to understand that our job is to prepare ourselves to be able to share precisely that which we have the capacity to give, just having a relationship or a conversation with someone else, being supportive, just being awareness of them, that will make a huge difference in how this world will progress. And if all of us do that, as a planetary species
Wow.
together, then we're going to have paradise. And that's how we get to the point on this planet where, this place can be, um, a world of bliss rather than conflict that we see so often these days.
Yeah. Wow. I think that when we realize the effects of of doing that, and having that compassion, and allowing each person, uh, not just to share, but to inquire even about themselves, and put it out there, with confidence and vulnerability at the same time, which is a very possible thing. We actually create greater opportunity for everyone. You know, um, I know in another conversation you mentioned something about journaling our responses and reflecting upon our immediate uh, experiences and our emotional responses to them. There's some value in that. Writing down, situations where we felt defensive, for example, or brainstorm on ways that compassion could have made the big difference in some of the things, the outcomes that we weren't really pleased with. Can you talk a little more about that, and how powerful that can be?
Y- Yes, I think that one of the things that we experience and that we really don't talk enough about is the value of adversity. Like when we do face conflict and struggle,
Mhm.
and um, we survive, we make it through a difficult time in our lives, whether it's a relationship problem, work-related issues, health concerns, whatever problems we may face. I mean, I just faced some problems about financial issues and kind of made me anxious,
Yep.
but I was able to figure it out, and ultimately the situation, quote unquote, worked itself out, or I was able to come up with a solution. Each time that happens, our self-esteem is improved. The way that our self-esteem is very silently and almost covertly improved is when we experience a hard time, but nonetheless, we see that we survive. That the philosopher Nietzsche said years ago, as many of us have heard, that which does not kill me strengthens me.
That's
And
right.
it really is true when you realize, man, that was a hard time, but I made it through. We realize that we are strong
Yeah.
and that we have the capacity to survive adversity. And once we realize that, um, we go on a stronger and more capable entity. a stronger human being.
And after a while, we realized that uh, we can insulate ourselves against what looks like impossibility or what looks like, you know, overly challenging. We can insulate ourselves and recall that resilience and know we're going to get through it in the next moment, within a moment, and then begin imagining that, like you mentioned before. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the broader impact, and we're going to take a look at how compassion actually shapes society. So don't go anywhere. Thanks.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
And welcome back. Thanks for being with us. By the way, if you are enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe, and please comment on what you're learning and ask questions and participate with us, because we want to make this more about you, and we want to make this something that you can benefit from and share with other people. So anyway, what we were talking about in uh, the other segments was, if compassion can reshape an individual, what about communities? What about organizations? What about even nations? When you consider the exponential power, the exponential potential, if you will, that good communication has, we already know that not so good communication has a lot of power. But imagine the power of good communication, compassionate, understanding, kind, even intrigue. All of these positive emotions can really bring about the changes that we want to see in the world, beginning with one person at a time, one small intimate relationship at a time. So study shows that communities with higher levels of compassion actually report more social trust, less conflict, and greater well-being. Compassionate leadership is linked to resilient workplaces and healthier societies. Let's talk about that a little bit. And let's talk a little bit about beginning with our families. Dr. Murphy, tell us a little bit about what it was like for you. I know your grandmother
Yeah,
had an important influence on you.
one of the things that I think is really an interesting observation about this particular time in our culture and our community, even here in the United States, we're largely an immigrant population. I know my
Yep.
grandparents escaped from Ireland. I mean, they literally were in danger in Ireland, and they needed to get away in order to be safe. So once again, they were looking for some kind of safety after a lifetime of danger and starvation, and many of our ancestors were in those situations, and they sought a move to another place because they wanted to literally survive. So that was the case with my grandparents, who made their way to the United States, utterly impoverished, surviving by the skin of their teeth, not having anything, just a sort of a relatively ramshackle apartment that they lived in for most of their lives. It was really a difficult struggle for them. And so I remember one day when we were sitting at the table and we were talking about something good that might happen. And she said, "Oh, no, don't talk about it. You'll jinx it." So she had this sort of reactive and reflexive pattern that even entertaining the possibility of a positive outcome was dangerous, because she was so accustomed to the human struggle and deprivation and loss and suffering and pain. So, now we as a civilization have made a lot of progress. We've had our struggles as a species, for sure, all of the wars and the cataclysms that we have engaged in as a species over the many hundreds of years of our civilization. But we're coming to a point now where we have reached a level of possibility where peace can happen. I mean, it could be the case. So you're talking about just being willing to engage in the risk of choosing to believe in
Yeah.
a positive outcome, the
Right.
risk of compassion. I mean, we sort of need to be able to choose to risk compassion. So you could put a sign on your wall: risk compassion. Like, just
Yeah.
take the chance to
Yeah.
be compassionate, in the expectation that that's the best and most courageous thing that we can do as a species, is rather than anticipating sort of the negative struggle and the disastrous outcome that we might have expected in the past, that now we need to change that mentality. So the fundamental skill is choosing to risk compassion in every encounter of our lives, every
That's right.
moment of our lives, every time we go to the store and buy something, to offer a greeting to the other person, to, in our work, in our family lives, to manifest love and caring as much as we can, and choosing to do that. So I think that's a huge transition that we're going through now as a species, particularly in this country where so many of us were people who have come from struggle and have struggled for survival.
For sure.
And now we have an opportunity to thrive.
Keep in mind that there are other people out there, no matter how successful they may be, they probably had to struggle to get where they are. Keep that in mind when listening to other people who seem to have achieved a lot, because they have achieved a lot at the cost of struggle. Thank you for being with us. We want to welcome you to invite you to next week's show. Please like and subscribe, and please, please, please add your comments. Thank you, Dr. Murphy, for being my co-host.
And thank you so much for being there. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
This has been Snippets of Wisdom with hosts Dr. Mike Corral and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Tune in and learn about the primary issues facing our society today, and find the best chance of securing a stable and prosperous future. Snippets of Wisdom will enrich your life and the lives of all of your loved ones.